I'm not an educationalist, but, the bit of research and what I've seen in my line of work is that this often has a ripple effect, later on for children to do things like maths and science and so forth. So I think it's incumbent on us, to get our children reading in any way that they can, whether it's through hard books or through digital mediums and so forth. And I know this podcast is for, a whole myriad of people that will listen to it. And if it's for young people, that children understand that regardless of the circumstance or the situation or the environment you're born into, your geography does not define
100%.
who you are. I was a young girl coming out of Newlands East. I never envisaged that I would be, running or leading an organization that I am today. I never, saw myself pulling myself up by my own bootstraps and trying to, get hold of my life and go, okay, this is the path I'm going to take and that sort of thing. Wow. So yes, it does, shape you in very different ways.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hello and welcome to ThinkPod, where we talk about everything education, technology, and business. My name is Tebogo, and I'm your host today. Today, I'm joined by an awesome soul, a lovely lady by the name of Shireen. She is the CEO of Project Isizwe, and she will be sharing information about what their business does and then the impact that they are creating in their various communities. So, without any further ado, help me welcome Ms. Powell. Hello, Shireen.
How are you, Tebogo?
I am good. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm super excited to be here, and I love what you've done.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for coming through. We appreciate your gracing us with your presence.
Thank you.
Awesome. So let's get started. Just want to know a little bit about yourself. Give us some background. Who's Shireen? Where do you come from? Where do you grow up? And stuff like that. The easy stuff.
Well, you say it's the easy stuff. Often it's not the easy stuff. I often remember when I used to interview when I was still in corporate and I used to say, tell me about yourself. And people would just generally aggregate or go to telling me about the work that they've done. And I think as humans, we forget that we are actually people, and there's a human side. So I like this question.
Yeah.
It's probably one that when I was younger, I shied away from. But I think now that I'm older, I think you've got nothing to hide. You've got no inhibitions. Like life has happened. You've been through them all. And so you're just free to talk about a lot of stuff. So yes, my name is Shireen Powell. I'm the CEO of Project Isizwe, but I'm not defined by that. I grew up in the 70s. I'm not saying whether it was the early 70s or the late 70s.
Somewhere there.
Somewhere there.
Yeah.
You'll see I'm also comfortable with my age. Yeah. So grew up in the 70s, or was born in the 70s rather, in Umtata, Eastern Cape.
Oh, you're from Eastern Cape?
I'm not from there. I was born there. My mother was from the Eastern Cape. Okay. Parts born in Umtata. My mother was from Lusigisi. And I think that back then it was called the homeland. It was Transkei and that sort of thing. And but I grew up in KZN, in Durban more specifically. And more specifically than that, a suburb or a township suburb called Newlands East.
Yeah.
Now, Tebogo, I don't know if you know Newlands East. It looks very similar to a lot of historically disadvantaged communities that were underserved, still is underserved. And if I speak more frankly, it was a coloured township. So I grew up in Newlands East, and when I talk about underserved or the challenges that community faced, again looks very similar to the way we see a lot of communities in South Africa currently. gangsterism, unemployment, youth unemployment, just high crime, people that were just absolutely economically challenged and that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that background. I think, I'm going to be asking some leading questions around the work that you do at Project Isizwe. And I think with this background around where you're coming from, it explains why the work that you do, right? Without answering my own questions, but it sort of gives some background as to why this you do what you do.
Because I think that people that grow up, in traditionally, disadvantaged backgrounds have got they look at life through a very different lens, and I think first and foremost you look at your history and your background, and I think it's incumbent on you to help, and it's always been incumbent, on me to help. I think even my years in corporate, and that sort of thing. But coming back to, who I am, that's who I am. That's where I grew up. I was also raised by an incredibly strong woman.
Yeah.
And I think that's what gives me my strength today. As a matter of fact, we've got a long history and a legacy of very strong women in my family.
Beautiful.
My mother was a single mother and a very strong woman. But the one thing I learned from her was to be kind. And I'm going to be straight up and say we were poor. We were very poor. And not that there's degrees. I mean, you're poor.
Yeah.
But she pulled through. She did what she could for us.
Wow.
And I think there were many lessons, in that for me growing up as a young girl, and just how I needed to be and the things I needed to, do.
Yeah.
I come from a family of 4 siblings. I'm second in the pack.
Okay.
And for the longest time, I was a middle child. And a lot of people tend to think that being a middle child is disadvantage. It's a disadvantage. But I actually saw it as an advantage because, and she'll probably kill me if she ever has to watch this podcast, my older sister had the bulk share and the lion's share of the chores.
Yeah.
And that meant, I had a bit of flexibility and I could go and spend a lot of hours in the library reading and doing the things that I wanted to do, and that sort of thing, and educating myself.
Yeah.
And books were not, freely available, and that sort of thing. I remember my early childhood reading things like Reader's Digest. I mean, you probably wouldn't know what that was.
I know it. What do you mean?
The most boring kind of books, but I read them,
yeah.
Because it was the only thing I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
So, yes,
Okay.
grew up in a very humble environment. I think it shaped, who I am today. It really gave me a special warp, rightfully, wrongfully, or whatever. So I'm very grateful for my upbringing. And I'm grateful, for, just the paths and the opportunities it gave me later on in life, and also the resilience. Because I think, when you grow up in a set of surroundings where you're unsafe mostly or whatever, you become very resilient. You grow very different skills. You harness very different skills.
Yep.
And so I don't look back at my upbringing, in the way I used to when I was younger,
Yes.
which led me to shy away from it. I speak about it boldly and openly now because it really has truly defined who I am as a woman, as a human being, and a woman in business.
Wow, I love that. Quite interesting because I like the point that you mentioned about that when you grew up in spaces like that, it makes you look at life in a different lens. Because I grew up in a space where we had absolutely nothing. I grew up in a impoverished community.
Yeah.
Where we didn't have anything. The person who was supporting the entire family was grandma.
Yes,
exactly. My grandmother was the one who was supporting us working in as a domestic worker in the various spaces. So you learn to become resilient over time. And then, of course, naturally, with me as well, just like you saying, it created a space where you want to give back.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing with me with the think tank that I'm like, actually, I want to create a space where other people can be able to get an opportunity and a platform where they can transform their lives, and those of their family and immediate community.
100%.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So very interesting that you should say that.
I definitely, and thank you for sharing that with me, because I think those parallels are important. And I think what it does show you from very early on in life is the starkness of inequality, and often because of where you're born and, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that should never be the defining or the thing that defines who you are.
Yeah.
And I know this podcast is for, a whole myriad of people that will listen to it. And if it's for young people, that children understand that regardless of the circumstance or the situation or the environment you're born into, your geography does not define
100%.
who you are. I was a young girl coming out of Newlands East. I never envisaged that I would be, running or leading an organization that I am today. I never, saw myself pulling myself up by my own bootstraps and trying to, get hold of my life and go, okay, this is the path I'm going to take and that sort of thing. Wow. So yes, it does, shape you in very different ways.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. So now that you've mentioned that you are now leading an organization, I want to know, how did you even get into the space? I mean, tech.
Yeah.
It's such a male-dominated industry. So how do you even get into that space?
Well, probably by accident. I think if you say to me, what was your childhood dream? It was to become a doctor, but there was no money to study, and become a doctor. But I knew that I'd be helping people in some way. It was on the cards for me that I would always help people in whatever shape that was going to look like. So I didn't get into tech through the traditional ways, which is often engineering, or something like that. I came in through the door of business. Okay. When I came into business, I worked with beautiful brands like Nedtel Cellular, which was the cellular environment. It was the cellular arm of Nedbank at that point in time. And then Nashua Mobile.
Nedbank has cellular arm.
It did. It did.
Somebody shared with me.
It was a massive organization.
Really?
Yes.
Somebody mentioned that ABSA had something similar, like an ISP business.
There we go.
It's such an interesting thing.
It was mobile and that sort of thing. It was an offering, that was given to Nedbank clients, at that point in time. So I worked for that brand. It then got merged with Nashua. And Nashua was also in the mobile sort of space, but also in the office automation space. And so those two businesses came together, and it then brought about the brand Nashua Mobile, which was an incredible organization. Okay. Is still around in the office automation side of things and so forth. I worked with an unbelievable organization. I think this is where I had most of my learning in tech, called iBurst. I don't know if you remember it. It was 2006, 2007, which was those beautiful orange bubbles and that sort of thing. Great organization. When I got into that business, it was also through the lens of, starting off from the bottom and then clawing my way up. I was very passionate about customer service.
So you were looking after, you were client-facing.
I was very client-facing. Okay. I looked after all of the grumpy clients. So if there was a client that was upset, and if you remember, iBurst it wasn't only business to business, it was mostly business to consumer, end users and that sort of thing. So you had many, many upset customers that were coming in because their, wireless connectivity wasn't working and that sort of thing. It was a great business in that we had carte blanche to craft it and create it the way we wanted to create and that sort of thing. So I was client facing. I looked after clients. I looked after the customer experience from the minute you walked into that door all the way, until you walked out with an orange bubbled box. Okay. So great learnings and just great people. People have always been in, at the epicenter of everything I've done.
Yes,
and I think it always just panned out that way. And then from iBurst, I joined a wonderful brand, also homegrown, which was Dimension Data, and more specifically the Internet Solutions brand, which you obviously also know too well. Yes. And when I came into Internet Solutions, I honestly did not understand what I was going to be doing. I met a wonderful gentleman, Tony Kotakis, and he said to me, I'd like you to do this. And I said, I don't understand it. And I said, let me work for free.
Yeah.
Because I actually don't understand
Really?
I don't understand what I'm going to be doing here.
But Shireen, you had background with iBurst and Nashua Mobile.
Yes.
Didn't that count for anything?
Well, Internet Solutions was a fairly large organization, and it had. I think when we look back, when I joined, corporate South Africa was I would say 85% of corporate South Africa was getting their internet from Internet Solutions. So you had very big, clients and that sort of thing. The challenge or the job role was to actually take care of grumpy clients, but on a very large scale. And this was churn, what you called, and people in ISP still talk about it, which is churn. It was managing their churn, but also retaining clients, but retaining your very high-end customers and that sort of thing.
And then I think the difference now with Nashua and Nashua Mobile and the other business, iBurst, it was a B2C model versus
That's right.
with Internet Solutions, because it's business to business now.
Correct.
It's a different client, different
Yes.
kind of caliber of clients.
Yes.
Okay.
And also, quite a large organization, different processes, a lot of automation that needed to happen, and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So it was quite a challenge. And I mean, I would honestly say to, young people that are out there that are looking to get into businesses and that sort of thing, don't be shy to go and work for free.
Yeah.
Don't be shy to go and work for free. I did it many years ago. I went and I didn't do it for a long time because they eventually said, listen, you can't roam around our offices as a visitor. So you're going to have to sign an agreement.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that's essentially what I did.
Wow.
That was the approach I took and that sort of thing. So so that's essentially, how I got into the tech world and that sort of thing. And I guess you can't be in tech unless you start understanding, things like networking, cybersecurity, and that sort of thing. And I think in each one of these organizations, we've all been blessed because we've had to learn and have steep learning curves, and learn everything that you actually needed to learn. I mean, if I look at Internet Solutions, in that business, we all had to learn everything end to end. You needed to know exactly, what was going on. You couldn't go and sit in front of a customer until you were, fully versed in absolutely every single product offering, and so forth. So I think, this notion as well, that you've got to learn everything before you actually go into a job. No, I don't think you can.
Yeah, no, you can't.
And I think there's so much out there, and there's such beautiful organizations, like Think Tank as well, that is off, in terms of their offering, that you can harness and you can continue to grow your skills, even if it is, piece by piece.
Yeah, 100%.
And so forth.
Yeah. So you started with Internet Solutions as somebody who's just volunteering initially. You got a contract.
Well, it wasn't. Well, it wasn't volunteering. I basically came in and I said, I'd like to see what I'm going to be doing, because I don't quite understand it.
Yeah.
And then and once I fully understood, that this is actually the role, and also having the flexibility to learn and to bring in my own expertise and experience and create something, for the organization, is when I said, okay, fine, you can now employ me.
Yeah. Oh, no, but at Internet Solutions, you were a force to reckon with, eh?
Thank you.
Oh, you did absolutely amazing work. And I was like, Shireen this, and his customers is like, wow, who's this Shireen that they keep talking about? Right,
it's an interesting space within Internet Solutions. I was with Internet Solutions for roughly 12 years, 11 years, 12 years. And I changed my role probably every 2 to 2.5 years, which is just amazing. I know that back in the day that was very frowned on. People always looked at a model employee to have been in a role for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. I'm just the type of person that likes to get my hands dirty. At Internet Solutions, I was known as the problem fixer. If you gave me a business problem, I would fix it. I would get my hands dirty, try and understand it, and that sort of thing. And that was one way of actually trying to learn the business in its entirety. So, I mean, I went from managing churn, retaining clients, in the sales organization to crafting, quite unique programs around, customer sponsorship and that sort of thing, to going into HR, something I knew nothing about.
Yes.
And that sort of thing through.
And that's where we met.
Correct.
Yeah.
And dovetailed on the learning piece, which is so very close to my heart. And then also operations, end to end. When we started up the SME brand, which was called Ignite, I ran an operational workforce which also included engineers, network engineers, cybersecurity engineers, platform engineers, systems engineers, and the likes, things that I didn't really know about, and so forth. And I guess, that's a segue into talking about, the tech space. And do you need, the engineering skills? Yes, absolutely. You need to know what you're talking about. But I think you need to have the business side of things. I think you need to have the people side of things. You need to know how to manage people. And I also think that you have to have some leadership skills, you know. And so I think when you can put all of those together, I think you can be a force to be reckoned with, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. So all these skills you were learning on the job as you go along, because you were doing absolutely amazing work. You were just learning on the spot.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's incredible.
Absolutely. One of the ways to do that is to align yourself with people that are cleverer than you.
I like that.
I used to remember a quote that somebody said, if you are in a room and you know everything, you're just in the wrong room.
Yeah.
And I was blessed that I was often sponsored by senior people in the organization. So they may have seen something in me. And, I've got to say that, I always put myself forward, and said, I can do this, because I'll learn, and that sort of thing. So you need to be, you need to be sponsored, by people. You've got to align yourself with some people that are decision makers that can teach you something. But you've also got to be teachable.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes, pride can take over and you can just go, well, no, what can you teach me? I know everything, or I've got this degree, or whatever. But
and you
I think
the opportunity.
100%. And I think you've just got to be teachable. Yeah.
Okay. So there was Internet Solutions, Ignite. Then what happened after that?
So that took me to around about 2020. Our organization was going through massive change, as organizations must, I think the world evolves and change is a constant. And I think you've got to know that if you're in business, things are going to change. No day is the same, you know, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, you would know this too. As an entrepreneur, today you're worrying about cash flow. Tomorrow you're worrying about a CCMA case. The next day you're worried about a community that's completely gone down, or your kit has been stolen, or whatever. Something
There's
has
just
happened.
something happening.
Something will happen. That's what do they say? The things that are constant: death, tax, and maybe running a business. Things will fall over.
They should actually add that.
So 2020, the business was going through change and that sort of thing. And I was also at a point in my life at a crucial intersection, which was, I'd done all of this business stuff, and purpose was like constantly nagging at me, purposeful work. I remember very fondly the mission statement of Internet Solutions, being, through the internet we make the world work better. I may have got that slightly wrong, but you get the gist of it. And I wondered about that. And I wondered about, all of these skills that I'd learned. And I just wondered, how could I put it to good use? And it's the funniest thing, I always think of, I say this, that, sometimes you think things and you kind of put it out there and then the universe conspires to bring it to you. In my early days of my career, I'd met a wonderful gentleman called Alan Nott Craig Jr. And that was back at iBurst. And in 2020, after I'd left Dimension Data Internet Solutions, he called me and he said, I believe you are unemployed. And by the way, it was also COVID. So nobody was employing.
Nobody
so it was probably
actually people
the
were letting
worst
go of
time
people
to exit a business
Yeah.
and then start up, your own business or whatever the case might be. And he said, well, what are you doing? And I said, nothing actually. And he said, well, you've left one, what's plan B? And I said, well, for the first time in my life, I don't have a plan B. And there's another nugget. You don't always have to have a plan B. And that sort of thing. I'd lived my entire life going, I need a plan B. And found myself somewhere at the end of October 2020, October 2020 with no plan B. And he said to me, he says, we've got this organization. It's called Project Isizwe. I said, I know it very well. I know it very, very well. And I love, what it has done, but what is it currently doing, And we got talking about it, and the next thing I joined Project Isizwe in the operational space. And it was really for me to, get my hands dirty, fix it, put down some processes, bring on some people, and get it going. And what it was delivering at that point in time was internet connectivity into mining-led, organizations under Glencore Coal, Glencore Alloys, and the likes. But it was just mostly public Wi-Fi, free public Wi-Fi, into some of these areas and that sort of thing. And that's how I actually ended up at Project Isizwe.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. And what inspired the name Project Isizwe? Where did that come from? It will be very interesting to know that background.
So Isizwe is nation. And the thought behind it was building a nation, and it was, predominantly steeped in internet connectivity and giving the freedom of internet, into communities that were particularly underserved, that were using mobile data. Mobile data was exceptionally
Very expensive, yeah.
It still is.
Still is, yeah, I was about to say.
Still very unaffordable, and that sort of thing. So Project Isizwe was actually formed in 2013. It did a massive rollout in the city of Tshwane, where it took over 1,000, public Wi-Fi spots and peppered it around the city. There were wonderful stories, many awards that were won out of that project. And I guess it was set up as a project, but the name stuck, Project Isizwe.
I see.
And it's exactly what we do today, Tebogo. We have projects all over the show. We obviously have got a very defined way of working and that sort of thing, but they are particularly project-based.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's essentially how, the business was formed, and that sort of thing. I didn't found it. I'm not the founder of Project Isizwe, but I certainly have been at the helm now for the last 4 years. We've changed the strategic direction of the business, which was predominantly free Wi-Fi into rural communities and far-flung areas. But we know that free is not free, and free is not sustainable.
It's not sustainable,
and sustainability is at the core of what we're doing. We never ever want to, turn off a school because it was not sustainable, and neither do we want to turn off internet connectivity in a community because it wasn't sustainable, and that sort of thing. So it was really rethinking and turning it on its head and going, how can we do this by making impact, but truly, providing high speed, very congruent, internet connectivity, one that works, one that can be supported, one that the community loves, one that the community can be part of, because we know that in South Africa, you cannot get into a community, just arrive there and say, I'm here to provide internet connectivity. Because, there's a saying that says, if it's for us, then not without us.
Yes.
And so
yes.
our work is deeply, deeply rooted in working with the community and making sure that there's complete buy-in, and so forth.
Yeah. So what are some of the services? Do you is it like a traditional ISP business where you'll have packages that somebody can buy? How do even people buy? Is it, do you need to just have a phone and you can access it? How does it work?
So it's two-pronged. I think let's just talk about the two ways that we exist. The one is we are a connectivity provider into schools. The landscape for schools is that we still have close to 17,000 public schools that are not connected to meaningful internet connectivity. What do we mean by meaningful internet connectivity? It means that children can, or rather that internet goes beyond the admin block, because we know that a lot of schools are just connected to the admin block, which is where the principal, the educators are, but that is not internet for teaching and learning. So the internet that we provide is for teaching and learning. We work very, very well with ISPs. We work with the fiber network operators. We work with a number of people that are providing internet connectivity. And what we do is, we found the gap was essentially, part of the universal service obligations of a lot of MNOs and FNOs was to just put the thing into the admin block. So we take it from that admin block and we further put it into 4 or 5 learning areas for the school. So that's the one model, which is around the schools and that sort of thing. That's often funded. And this is where, we started looking at how do we make school connectivity sustainable. So one of those ways was an area in Porfomeni in Harwick. It's a township in Harwick.
Yeah.
We'd covered a cluster of schools, so about 6 or 7 schools. We put down the internet into all of those schools. And then we thought, well, how do we bring about a blended way that we have a CapEx funder that can fund, all of the hardware going into the schools.
Yep.
We, at that point in time, didn't have a connectivity funder because often in the far-flung areas, capacity is a big problem.
Yeah.
All you can find there, you might get, some sort of a broadband service, but in the very, very edges, you're only going to find LTE. And you definitely cannot run, a network on LTE or anything like that.
Not for such a large groups
Correct,
of people, yeah.
100%, and it's too expensive.
Yeah.
So we covered these schools, and then we thought, well, if we turned on public Wi-Fi as a paid-for model, could the community come on, and can we create a blended financing model that the community, if you came in with very affordable internet connectivity, could they then afford to buy it? It may not be every single day, but maybe every second or third day as an alternative to expensive mobile data, perhaps. Could this model work?
Yep.
And so we tried it. And it did need a bit of a runway, and it did work. So what we have currently in Porfomeni is 6 schools that we came into. And from those 6 schools, we went into public Wi-Fi. So we put down access points at spaza shops, car washes, at a church, you name it, whatever was in the community. Now, if you go into any community, you know that you're guaranteed to find a school.
Yeah.
You're guaranteed to find a clinic. You're guaranteed to find a police station.
Yeah.
You're guaranteed to find, these communal structures, So it was incumbent on us to provide internet connectivity into those spaces, firstly. And then to fill in the gaps by going into the community and that sort of thing. And then turning those community, where the access points were in the community, turning those into hosts, but people that wanted to resell Wi-Fi for their community.
Oh,
so they became resellers.
So you're creating employment or
Correct.
Business owner.
Yes, social entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So somebody that that hosted our access point would then become an entrepreneur, and they would on-sell to the community. And then from there, I happened to be looking at the network one day, and I saw that the bulk of our users were on during the night. And I thought, well, what would this look like if we took this internet and actually put it into people's homes? And we did that too. And what can I say? We've now got a sustainable network.
Wow,
that is firstly bringing in revenue and sustaining all 6 schools, the clinic, the police station, and the like. So your sort of central points get it for free. The schools get it for free, but the community pays. And the service offerings, which you asked about, is we take it in increments of 5 Rand for 24 hours.
That's affordable.
Very affordable.
$5. That's like snacks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you'll find that, often even that is not affordable sometimes, for somebody that is, earning a wage, daily wage, and that sort of thing. And I still do believe that we've got to do more, from a price point perspective. So 5 Rand per day, 25 Rand for 7 days, and 100 Rand a month. And what we see, in terms of the stats is that people lean towards the 5 Rand. And it just it talks to what people have got as disposable cash.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah.
So the 5 Rand and the 25 Rands and the $100 is unlimited Wi-Fi?
Uncapped.
That's crazy.
It's uncapped.
That is madness. Who does that? Oh, Project Isizwe does.
There are some wonderful organizations that are also doing it. One of those is Fiber Time.
Okay.
And they've, been quite prolific in a number of communities and that sort of thing. And others, I think there's Net99, there's also Elita. And I think it's wonderful that in South Africa we have got companies that are sitting up to go into the communities where we know ROI is just, it's not on the big corporate slips, because we know it doesn't work because of infrastructure costs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think it is time that we actually sit up to the fact that we do need to have the right price points in our communities, so that people are not left out of the digital economy.
Yeah.
People are not left out of, and especially from an educational, perspective, for learning at the very minimum. I think the freedom of internet, can move the needle.
Yeah,
in
100%.
education.
Yeah, I think especially in education, because the way the pace of technology is growing, is moving, it's alarming, right?
100%.
So if you don't have access to internet, then the challenge there is that you get you get left behind. People are learning every day, and then if you are disconnected, or a community that is not connected, that lacks connectivity, then you're gonna be finding yourself in a space where you are now lagging behind in terms of knowledge, information, and the economy. You become disconnected from that as well.
Absolutely.
So it's such a fundamental thing that you're providing in terms of the service.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, Project Isizwe. So from an education standpoint, if other organizations that are bringing in the education, they want to collaborate, what are some of the ways that they can collaborate with you?
Well, I'll use some examples. We turned on about 14 schools in the township of Alexandra in Joburg. And we recently launched Canva. So you can bring texturized teaching into classrooms and creativity, and the teachers can actually, have very engaging lessons, and lesson plans with their students and that sort of thing. But we know that Canva can't work, in a school unless you have the baseline, which is internet connectivity.
Yeah.
So yes, we've done it with Canva. We're doing it with another EdTech partner, and this is to strengthen literacy in South Africa, and particularly in the schools that we currently serve, through NABU. And NABU is a literacy app, and basically children can read in their mother tongue, not just English, in any language that they're comfortable in reading. And we know, Teboho, that over 80% of grade 4s, or the age 9 and 10-year-olds in our country, and even on the continent, are not able to read a text for meaning. And I'm not an educationalist, but the bit of research and what I've seen in my line of work is that this often has a ripple effect, later on, for children to do things like maths and science, and so forth. So I think it's incumbent on us, to get our children reading in any way that they can, whether it's through hard books or through digital mediums and so forth. So those are the two programs we are doing at all of our schools currently.
Are you looking for more programs that you want to incorporate into as part of the structure?
Absolutely. So if I look at, I think, we're touching on the primary schools, we're touching on the secondary schools because we want to do things like maths and science in the secondary schools. But then there's also our communities, So what happens? Not everybody's going to go to university.
Yes.
Not everybody's going to go to a TVET college, If we can start to strengthen taking courses, short courses, pretty similar to, what Think Tank offers by way of honing in and building engineering skills in our communities and that sort of thing. That would be, a great way to partner, and especially to create jobs and that sort of thing. So I just think that if you can, start taking quite relevant training that doesn't need to touch on, higher education or any of those things that are out of reach for a lot of our unemployed youth. I think that would be just a wonderful, full turnkey solution that we can take into the communities that we serve.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. I think it's incredible. So you find that education, it's whenever you want to go to university, not everybody, to your point, not everybody's going to get an opportunity to go there because
That's
maybe
right.
there isn't funds or there isn't space available or you don't meet the minimum requirements, right? Yeah. Specifically in tech, the challenges there is that with university, without discrediting what the universities are doing, is that the pace in which the technology is growing is very alarming. It's moving in a very, very alarming pace.
That's right.
So the skills that you're doing with companies such as Think Tank is that you get to learn the current stuff that's happening now. It's things that are aligned with industry. And then if you are now getting that information from a public school perspective, because I know you predominantly work with public schools, is that you can get access to that education at a high school level, for example, right? Then with that, by the time you finish your grade 12 and you're ready to go to varsity, you're already empowered with skills that even if you don't get an opportunity to go to university, you can get a job.
Yes.
Not just any job, but something that is very sustainable and impactful in your life.
Absolutely.
So to your point, those collaborations, those partnerships are quite fundamental to have.
They're very fundamental. The communities that we work in, to my point earlier, you can't work in those communities without the community members themselves.
Yeah.
And in fact, not very often, all the time, when we start up, a network in a community, and whether that's school connectivity or into the community itself, whether it's a public Wi-Fi solution or into the homes, you have to work with the communities, which means that the community needs skills.
Yeah, correct.
And you've got to train. You've got to train how to do a access point installation. You've got to train how to configure, the access points, the router, the radio, and the likes, so that all needs quite deep skills, so these kind of collaborations, Think Tank, Project Isizwe, and whether it's, it's funded by a funding partner that is, quite invested in actually getting our youth educated, because it doesn't just stop there, I think of, and if I could use an example, so a gentleman called Sipho, who is in the same community in Mpofu, started working with us. I mean, when we started working with Sipho, beautiful story, he was doing broilers, like chickens and those kind of things. And he put up his hand for this tech work, but hadn't been exposed to it or anything like that. So our little team started working with him. And we started growing, the skills. So he would shadow with somebody every single day on how to do the installations and that sort of thing. Today, Sipho is a network engineer.
Wow.
In Mpofu, there's nothing we can tell him. We can't. We've got to ask him, what do you need to do here? Where else do we need incredible. To go? And that sort of thing. And I think the beauty of that is also bringing in, this ability to run your own business within your community, because where is Sipho going to work, unless he's creating entrepreneurship within Mpofu, and that sort of thing. And it's the same for so many of the communities that are on the edge. There are no, there's maybe some hospitality, Airbnbs and that sort of thing, but there's no work, in the mining towns. Yes, there's the mines, and that sort of thing. But the mines can only employ, a certain number of people.
There's only so many jobs
so
available.
we have to just think differently around, creating entrepreneurship. And I think a good place is to look at these communities and get them to connect themselves. Black wireless internet service provision that's happening within the community, where it's trusted, where those skills are, where those skills can continue, to get into the community and so forth. And then those profits coming out of that network, getting plowed right back into the community to uplift, to employ, to connect another school, to connect more, and so forth.
Yeah. And thanks for that. I think I just want to take it back a little bit where we spoke about the schools, where you are launching initiatives and you are rolling out internet connectivity in the schools. So what are some of the challenges that you're facing when you trying to penetrate those spaces where you're trying to roll out the network?
So power is a big problem, still remains a big problem. We were looking at an area out just not too far, near Orange Farm, or Val Marina rather, a little township there. It's an informal settlement of 4,000 people. There's absolutely no power. Wow. So power still, remains a big problem. I used to say vandalism, but I just find that now that you do the deep community work, and when you keep the internet running, people respect it and they understand the value it brings and the value it creates in their lives. Yeah. And so people protect it with everything that they have.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So I used to say vandalism before, but I find that, that's less, these days, and that sort of thing. Capacity in the areas that we're wanting to go into, So
what do you mean by capacity?
Internet capacity, backhaul.
Okay.
All right. So is limited. I serve a community in Burgersfort, Limpopo, and I can't get more than 40 megabits per second, and I'm trying to be very creative around 12 schools.
That's very small.
So capacity is hard in those areas. So when you come closer to home, so the urban areas, the schools there are often fiber fed. We can get fiber into those schools, which means EdTech becomes easier because EdTech is also high res, the videos and what you're trying to do and so forth. When you start going into peri-urban, it does start getting a little harder because you've got, some semblance of a broadband solution that you can put down. But it works, nonetheless, and that sort of thing. You may have to be a little bit more creative around what you're overlaying on those service, at those schools. But the rural areas is where we really, really do struggle. And that is why, I recently wrote an article that said, we actually have to start looking at adding the LEOs into the tool, the connectivity tool basket, or the connectivity basket of offerings. And that is, whether it's Starlink or OneWeb or Eutelsat or whatever it is, you've got to, it's probably the only way that's going to make us go faster, because fiber is not going to be trenched, anytime soon into some of those communities. So, so capacity still remains to be a big, big problem, So again, you've got to become creative, in schools, in the rural communities. Perhaps you're not putting down 4 access points, perhaps you're just funneling, internet connectivity into 1 or 2 learning spaces in a school. Yeah. But at least, there's some semblance of connectivity. So you'll go into the admin block, 2 classrooms, and that sort of thing. And then I think as it relates to schools, access devices is a problem. And we're talking about smart collaborations as well. We've recently partnered with GSM Systems, which is taking devices that would have ordinarily filled up a landfill and that sort of thing. And now we're taking them and getting rid of them in a responsible way, which is to take them into communities, put them into the hands of children, get them to read, Nabu on these phones and that sort of thing. So access is often a challenge. Yeah, I guess I think that's predominantly it.
So I think partners like GSM Systems, we need more partners like 100%. That. Because if you are able to provide access, it's one thing to have internet connectivity, but access is what we are actually aiming for, right?
That's right.
The internet connectivity is just a conduit. It's just a vehicle that we're using, so we can be able to do the things that we want to do. So we need more partners like that company, GSM Systems.
The problem is, it's not one or two. It's multidisciplined. You know, it's bigger than we think. You know, you've got the internet. You could have the internet connectivity, but you're right. You know, there's access. There's also something we didn't touch on, and particularly in schools, is the safety of children. You know, so a scourge that has hit our South Africa, in fact, the world, I think, is gambling. You know, you're finding children that are in primary school that are gambling and that sort of thing. The solution we offer is to make sure that every child coming onto our network is safe. So they cannot access any adult content, any gambling. And during school, they cannot access social media.
That's great.
And I know that sounds draconian, but it does become terribly disruptive when an educator is trying to teach and a child is sitting on their phone, you know, on social media and that sort of thing. But I take nothing away from the fact that if, you know, you've got to keep the internet as free as possible and as open as possible so that children can continue to learn, you know, what it is that they're wanting to learn. But if you are providing internet connectivity into schools, then you've got to have those guardrails and making sure that you keep children safe. Yeah.
Okay, so at the moment, what sort of communities do you look after? How do you make a decision to say, okay, we are going to go into that particular community, we're going to set up infrastructure and we're going to connect them?
Yeah. So I think for the most part, we've probably been amoeba-like. We're an NPO, so we go where the funding is. And very often that is dictated by the funder. So in the mining towns and that sort of thing, there are many schools, you know, in those areas. And those are the schools, you know, they want to fund and that sort of thing. But in terms of our sustainable Wi-Fi networks where we've built and continue to sustain schools, or at least it's being sustained by the community, those have been particularly well chosen, and we've chosen them on the back of the model. You know, we're taking internet in increments of 5 Rand or 25 Rand or 100 Rand. There's some science behind that. If you're going to go into a very sparsely populated environment, the model won't work. You're not going to, you know, collect the right revenues to be able to fund your costs. And the biggest cost there is backhaul, you know, and that sort of thing. So you've got to be clever, and you've got to go where there's the right level of density in terms of population. We don't tend to look at, you know, sort of things like, you know, the market and the income potential, although we look at it, but it's invariably going to be low because we know the markets we serve, the income is traditionally low. So you've got to look past that and go, you know, do you have the right levels of density? What are some of those social ills that you look at? What can you solve for in a community like that? And so forth. And we've done pretty well in that we've got Lamontville in KZN, we've got Mpofu in Howick. We've got one community called Loskop in the Drakensberg, where there's actually very little. You know, you can maybe on a very tall hill get some MTN signal, but other than that, you can get nothing else. And so a community that is very grateful, you know, that they've got internet connectivity. And then we've done one out in Secunda, an area called Embalentle. I didn't think it was going to work.
How many schools, how many communities have you connected? It sounds like a lot. I mean, you keep mentioning names.
Over 31 communities.
Wow, that's incredible.
To internet connectivity, we're connecting close to 200 schools to meaningful internet connectivity. And it doesn't stop there because you can't just put down internet and walk away. You've got to support it. You've got to manage it. You've got to make sure it's up and running every single day. You've got to be able to talk to your schools to understand, you know, is power gone down or what's happening? You know, why isn't your school, you know, why is it not coming up on our network monitoring systems? So support is a very big thing. And I guess that's probably the beauty of what Project Isizwe done. You know, it does rather. It's whilst we're providing internet connectivity, we're taking care of those elements that a traditional ISP can't do. And I'm not saying that they don't want to do it, but they can't because it's not core. to their business and that sort of thing. Yes, we're touching over 1 million individual users a year.
That is amazing work, Shireen. That is amazing. So, I mean, doing all these things, being a female, are there any challenges? Because this is predominantly a male-dominated industry. What are some of the challenges that you're experiencing with that?
Well, firstly, I don't let it bother me.
Okay, I like that. I love that.
Yes, is it?
You don't even see it.
No, is it? Well, I don't recognize it any longer. And let me just say, as maybe a caveat, if I look back at my entire career, I must say that the people that have sponsored me and that have cheered me on and have groomed me and grown me and given me opportunities have been predominantly men. And I have to acknowledge that. And I have been blessed to work with some incredible human beings, in corporate and that sort of thing. And there were women. I'm not saying, but the question is centered around a male-dominated environment and industry. Have I walked into a room and have men raised their eyebrow around what does she know? Can she build a network? Or anything like that? Yes, I've had moments like that. I've also had. I'm a woman of color. I've also had eyebrows raised in that. Am I a tokenism? And I'm speaking very frankly. Yes, that's happened too, and it will happen. It will continue to happen. And we must sit up to that as women or anybody. In this environment. But the way I overcome that is, I make sure that when I'm speaking to new funders or people that are maybe a little bit more technically advanced than I am, I do deep preparation, very, very deep preparation.
Yeah.
I make sure that I know exactly what I'm talking about because I think that is born out of respect as well.
Yeah.
If you're going to go and talk to somebody that's technical, they've learned, they've got their skills, they've got their stripes. And if I'm non-technical, then I've got to have some inkling of what I'm talking about. So I do deep preparation and that sort of thing. And I guess my default is always to be the one that's going to continue to learn in the room. So if I'm meeting, with someone, then I make sure that, I'm learning from them. And I come in, saying, I don't know everything. I need your help in this and that and whatever. And it's worked well for me. I must say, I then get everything, out of that person and maybe even more, where they want to go the extra mile and help and that sort of thing. So I think it was a problem at one point, but
over the years,
I walk into a room and it feels quite equal. It feels quite equal. Yeah.
All right. I wanted to ask you a question around the mission of your mission with Project Isizwe. Where do you want to take it? What do you want to achieve?
Tebogo, we want to connect all of the schools in South Africa to meaningful internet connectivity.
27,000 schools?
I think it's probably sitting around 16,500 schools. We can't really get the number right, but we've definitely, and not just Project Isizwe, there are a number of organizations. I talked earlier about the FNOs who are sitting up to connect schools. But there's a gap because the Universal Services Obligations calls for MNOs and FNOs to cover to the admin block. It maybe needs policy change, in that we're saying don't just cover to the admin block, cover beyond the admin block. And that's something we're having conversations with governments and other institutions like UNICEF, GIGA.
Yeah.
So we've just signed a partnership with them as well, and that sort of thing. So we want to cover all of the schools that can be covered to meaningful internet connectivity in South Africa. And we want to do that safely and responsibly. And we want to make sure that communities around those schools can also be covered, to affordable internet connectivity. And that's really the mission of Project Isizwe.
Absolutely incredible. You mentioned something about entrepreneurial skills that are being developed through Project Isizwe as a organic structure of how you roll out internet connectivity in various communities. So if somebody wants to start a career, I mean, you're already doing it with Project Isizwe, but just to provide some tips, ideas, and guidance, somebody who wants to get into the ISP business, what are some of the things that they should consider?
So I think, some of the skills are predominantly from a human perspective. I think, if you can hone your leadership skills, and understand what do you need to be as a leader. I think, leadership skills go a long way. And I mean, you might think, oh, leadership means, I'm at the top and that sort of thing. No, it doesn't. It means that you're prepared to serve. So, service or servant leadership is what we've often used to call it. So you must just be humble enough to serve. You definitely need skills around the industry that are, around running an ISP and what that entails. So understanding spectrum, understanding backhaul, understanding how all of those elements fit together, understanding, networking, understanding the commercial aspects of it. So yeah, it's quite a big basket of things that you need to do. But I think that if you don't have to learn all of that. But I think if you can piece it together, if you can align yourself with people that have done it before, I think people are there and they're willing to give you a hand up. And I think you can make it work that way.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think from the education standpoint, Think Tank is available.
We're so looking forward to the collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we've been talking about it. I think we need to just plug it in now.
It just needs to happen. Yeah. It just needs to happen. But I think I do have something in the pipeline that is very, very powerful.
Amazing.
So that could very well be the beginning of something fruitful between our organizations.
Absolutely.
So I think this is the last bit now. For the young ones that are wanting to get into the education, the tech space, into the tech industry. I mean, you said you went into the tech space by fluke, right?
Yes, by accident.
So, but now that you've been through the journeys, what would you recommend is the most impactful, effective way to get into the education? I mean, into the tech space through from education space.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think when I think about this, are you asking education and tech?
So I'm asking. So somebody who wants to get into the tech space, what sort of education do they need to look at? What sort of background? What are the the things from it? Do they need to go to university? Do they need to go to these colleges?
Yeah.
Do they self-learn? What guidance would you provide?
So, I mean, you're literally answering the questions, as you're asking them. But I think if you have the ability to go to university, then absolutely. The science degrees, around computers and those kind of things, or engineering, particularly in the IT space. I think the TVET colleges are also offering, a lot of IT-related studies and that sort of thing. But if you are, and not everybody, I mean, we spoke about it earlier, not everybody is going to go to university, and not everybody is going to go to a TVET college or those kind of things. If you are really at a point where you've got no funding, or you have nobody, to actually show you the ropes and that sort of thing, I think there's so much out there. I think what you do need is a basic internet connection. And I think, short courses, I've seen it time and time and time again. I mean, we're all learning every single day. And I guess with the proliferation of AI, nothing can't be learned. I've seen people learn and change their careers and that sort of thing. It's all there on the internet. Harness it, learn it, come to Think Tank, learn, sign up for those courses. There's a whole basket of free courses that you can get onto. But I think, if you want to run an organization, like let's just say you want to run an organization like Project Isizwe, I think brush up on your business skills, understand, because we're talking tech and that sort of thing, and tech can't be standalone outside of knowing how to run a business. So you're going to have to know, some profit and loss and how to read a balance sheet and those kind of things. And those are all doable. You can learn all of that stuff. The other things you'll need to do is obviously understand, networking and how those things come together. And then how you support it. So how you build it, how you support it.
Yeah. That's it.
That's
all right.
it.
I think the last then question is, how do you then the organizations that want to collaborate with you, that want to connect with you, carry the mission forward, how do they get in contact with you?
They can follow us on Instagram, Project Isizwe. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, or on our website, projectisizwe.org. You can send us an email from there. You can also just connect with me on LinkedIn. We're also on LinkedIn, I beg your pardon. Okay. So you can connect with me or any one of our team members. We're a very small team, so your email won't get lost. So or you can just connect with me, and I'd love to collaborate. If you're wanting to connect, if you're a funder and you're wanting to use your corporate social investment money to come and fund schools, we're happy to do that. If you're an institutional funder, we're happy to collaborate. If you can collaborate with us on hardware and kit, that we're trying to get into schools and communities, then do that, like GSM systems or, access points. We work with wonderful hardware suppliers like Myro and Duxbury and those kind of guys. And, they've definitely been in our corner. And then on the EdTech side of things, we talked at length about Canva and Nabu and Think Tank, and if you want to collaborate and you've got an offering that you want to get into communities, then absolutely.
Thank you, Shireen.
And if you want to volunteer.
Yes. Oh, yes. And that as well.
If you want to volunteer at our organization, if you've got good skills that you think you can bring, and even if you don't have any skills, but you're not shy of hard work, come and work with us. We'll welcome you with open arms.
Thank you so much for that. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining this segment. I hope you've been educated by Shireen, everything that we've shared today. If you're wanting to start business, those are the tips, some of the tools, tips and tools that she shared with you. If you want to be educated in the technology space, you have platforms that are online. You do have a Think Tank as well. You do also have other spaces where you can explore. Just keep yourself in the know. Just keep yourself in the know. So I think that's it from our side. Thank you, Shireen, once again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was massive fun.
Thank you. So we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers.